Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's CATHETA webinar. We're coming to you live on November 29th. For those of you who don't already know, CATHETA means learning in Creek. And in that regard, today we'll be learning about Unity Talks, Echoes of Shattered Glass Enhancing Crime Control in Indian Country from William Latchford. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the NLC, and we are so thrilled that you could join us today. If you could follow along as I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. Please also note our copyright trade infringement. So know the materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. Just a friendly reminder. I want to familiarize you with some of the features available and how the environment works before we get started. So if you look at the top of your screen, you'll see an icon of either a person with their hand raised or maybe just a hand. Know that with that icon, you could either raise your hand, you could agree, you could disagree, or step away. And now your screen should look similar to this graphic here. To the bottom left, you will see a box that says Files. Here you'll find a copy of today's presentation slides. Feel free to download a copy for yourself. Just click the item that you want to download and click the arrow pointing downwards to download it and save it onto your device. The next box over says Web Links. That's where you'll find our survey about today's webinar, along with the link to join our email list and any other links that will be seen throughout today's presentation. Finally, all the way over to the right of the screen, we have a chat box available. Know that this is how you'll communicate with the instructor as well as the NLC staff. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to interact by using it. Just type your message and hit enter or click the up arrow button icon to submit. We do encourage class participation, so feel free to write in those questions or comments, and you can submit any tech support issues here as well. Just a heads up though, most of them can be solved by just exiting and re-entering the meeting room. So let's all try out the chat box together by typing in your name, where you're joining us from, and your tribal affiliation, please. And with that, it is with great pleasure I introduce today's webinar instructor, William Latchford. And Will, I'm going to hand it off to you now.
All right. Thank you, Brooke. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy holidays to all of you. I hope you're getting prepared for the fellowship that you can have with your family, and hopefully everybody has a great and safe holiday this coming weeks. We appreciate you being on today. Today, we're going to cover a lot of information. As you know, 90 minutes isn't a long time, but we're going to try and hit some key components that that we can build off of. So these are little training pieces that you can take with you, and of course my personal information will be there. If you ever need to follow up with me, I'm at your disposal. Feel free to give me a call. In cooperation with the Native Learning Center, today we're going to focus on Echoes of Shattered Glass, Enhancing Crime Control in Indian Country. We want to make sure we try to strengthen the Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act. We want to interact explorations of fostering partnerships with law enforcement. Law enforcement can't do their job by themselves, and sometimes in the field of law enforcement, the circumstances push us to where we sometimes become that barrier. So we want to try and always break those barriers, and we want to make sure we always have that partnership with other tribal programs. We want to unravel and collaborate with the models and theories and strategies out there and take those strategies that are in law enforcement or in the criminal justice world and make them fit to our individual communities. It's not a one-stop shop or paint every community with the same brush. And I think sometimes that's the easy approach as we move forward in every society. I think we sometimes get caught up into that, where we use that same paintbrush to try and solve our problems, and every community is unique and different. And we need to continue to remind ourselves that, so we can optimize the community public safety partnership to make sure those communities are safe. Through the description of today's class, we want to put the community first, as always. Without the community, public safety doesn't exist and cannot be successful. and of course with tribal housing in the NAHASDA principles. A little bit about us. The Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group is a Native woman-owned organization. Our consultants have law enforcement, fire, rescue, and emergency backgrounds, over 125 years of experience in those fields. And our whole sole purpose of the organization is to support all the tribe's public safety programs and to enhance and build on where they're at today and continue to make them strive to be better in the 21st century to provide concierge service to all tribal communities. A little bit about me. I just retired from the Seminole Tribe after 30 years of working with the Seminole Tribe back in April. The Seminole Tribe gave me an opportunity 30 years ago to start my career as a police officer. I rose through the ranks of the Seminole Police Department and eventually retired in April as the Executive Director of Public Safety over police, fire, and emergency management and the 10 reservations that the Seminole Tribe has here in Florida. My education background is I have a bachelor's degree in public administration. My master's degree is in criminal justice and emergency management. And this time next year, I'll be finished with my doctorate degree in Homeland Security. I've been fortunate enough through that opportunity with the Seminole Tribe to be able to attend the national ranked or recognized FBI National Academy, FBI LEDA, and the Command Officers Development course from the University of Louisville. Those three courses are the top notch of public safety, and through my commitment through law enforcement with the backing of the Seminole Tribe, I've had that opportunity to attend those organizations and network and create great opportunities to help public safety across the country. So time to get to work. As Brooke indicated earlier, feel free to add any questions or comments you have in the chat. Today, if you are attending and you would like one of our challenge coins for the organization, I'd be glad to send that to you. On behalf of Native Peacekeeper Consulting Group, we appreciate you being on today. It's just a little token of appreciation for the hard work and dedication you do every day in your roles throughout Indian country. Why are we here? We're here to understand the theory-based crime reduction strategies and their practical implementations. We want to learn the process of creating cultural appropriate crime prevention programs throughout Indian country. And we want to scrutinize some successful case studies demonstrating crime prevention practices in the real world. Let me go back. That's our challenge coin that if you send, put your address in the chat or you want to email me, my email will be put up and I can send that to you just as again, appreciation for being on today. All right, so let's get started to the meat of the program. Evidence-based crime reduction strategies. This is so important to the success of law enforcement and public safety. And I will tell you over the years, what I've learned is there's not enough of commitment to some communities as far as using evidence-based crime reduction strategies. And it's not any fault of any individual or circumstances. Just in public safety, you learn to deal with crisis and you move from crisis to crisis, and sometimes you lose focus where the evidence-based crime reduction strategies can help you slow down those crises in your endeavors. So the definitions are approaches and interventions that are supported by rigorous scientific data and data analysts. These strategies have been proven effective within crime rates and improving public safety. Currently, I'm working with Florida State University. I'm the co-director of their Native American Crime and Justice Institute. And after I retired, I really saw the opportunity to build on these evidence-based crime reduction practices in communities, because I think if communities continue to use this strategy, I think it'll help every community, but specifically Indian country, because these strategies can be tailored to work with your programs, work with your community, and work with your governments to have a successful and safe community. Importance of tailoring strategies. As we all know, tribal agencies and tribal communities are individually operated, and not one tribal community operates the same. Even with the Seminole Tribe in their 10 locations, it was policing and providing fire service and emergency management basically 10 times over because of the circumstances. You couldn't necessarily operate the same way on one reservation as you did the other, or implement a crime reduction strategy, because the communities were different. There's different challenges, there's different strengths that each community has, and law enforcement must recognize that in order to be successful. The tailored strategies, we want to make sure that they're cultural relevant. We want to make sure the community is focused and law enforcement's focused on the community. And we want to make sure we address the specific issues faced by tribal communities. It's so important for law enforcement to understand the tribes itself, and then the community's expectation of law enforcement. Because if you don't understand the expectations of the community as a law enforcement organization, you're going to have a difficult time finding these strategies to be successful, because you want to know those expectations so you can meet those expectations and work closely with the communities you serve. Some of the challenges faced by tribal police agencies in the communities, these are so important because it's not a quick fix to them, and there's so many of them, and we need to recognize that, and continue to talk about these challenges, because that's the only way we're going to progress to that solution. Jurisdictional complications are challenges across the country when it comes to Indian country. Depending on what state you live in, depending on the classification of your tribe in the state, depending on the relationships that you have with the other law enforcement jurisdictions, create these complex landscapes, and it leads to confusion, not just in Indian country, but even in the outside world. Federal agencies, state agencies, sometimes they don't educate themselves, or they don't know where to look to educate themselves to get to that level to understand these jurisdiction complications. And so it's so important that we face these challenges head on to make our communities safe. Limited funding and resources. There's a lot of money out there that the federal government puts out there. The problem is the manpower for organizations to do the necessary work to get those funds. There's a lot of behind the scenes efforts that has to go into it. And if you're a smaller tribe or smaller agency, sometimes you don't have that manpower to get those funds. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge that organizations, even big organizations, face because you don't necessarily have the tools in the toolbox to obtain those funds. So that's an important challenge we want to continue to look at. Data collection is very difficult. It's come a long way, but it's still a long way to go. Even with just recently the FBI and CJIS have kind of curtailed the crime statistics. And I know here in Florida, we were doing double entry of crime statistics. We were turning them into the state, and then the state would turn them into the FBI, and then we were turning them into BIA, and then BIA law enforcement was entered into the CJIS system. So sometimes there's duplication that comes just because the systems don't match up or the policies don't match up. So that's a challenge we face when it comes to tribal law enforcement and community safety. Cultural sensitivity is so important. That's important to understand the community that you police in order to implement those crime reduction strategies. It's one of those areas that it's a constant. You have to make sure that you're evolving with the community that you're policing, and understand the values and beliefs of every tribal community. The one thing they don't teach you in any police academy across the country is that law enforcement, you're trained a certain way, you're trained a certain way to think, and the law is black and white, and it's only written in black and white, but the law is actually meant to be gray. What they don't teach you is how to take law enforcement principles in that law and then mesh it with a community like Indian country. And you get very little training in police academies across the country that are very specific because of the dynamics of Indian country, the dynamics of different tribes. So it's upon every organization, police organization, to make sure that the cultural sensitivity is respected, and that you understand the sensitivities when you implement some of these crime reduction strategies. For example, when you have a tribe that's not public record, the outside world across the United States, in counties and cities and states, they're required to release public record information. And when you're not a public record entity, which majority of the tribes aren't, that creates some issues because when you're taught in law enforcement, you go over those public record laws, you go over how they're supposed to be applied, what has to be released. And when you come and work for a tribal government, there's different circumstances. So you have to understand those cultural sensitivities. You have to understand those cultural policies that are beneficial for the tribe. But it's very important that when you hire somebody or you have somebody that works under you in law enforcement, it's important to make sure that they get that training. And so that becomes a challenge if you don't have those trainings to basically mold that individual to be able to police within the community they're serving. So that's important. As we understand and we clearly know that history impacts how society is today. The past has to be recognized because of all the mistrusts that were in the past, within Indian country and law enforcement. That's an important piece that we have to heal on. We have to focus on, we have to acknowledge it in law enforcement in order for us to move forward and not move forward by ourselves. We have to acknowledge it with the communities. We have to recognize the impacts that that mistrust is causing the community, and we need to move forward together with the community. So it's very important to build that cooperation and those relationships. But to build those relationships, you have to understand the past, and you have to be able to acknowledge the past and the past wrongs and make it right and build that trust up again. And it can be done. Infrastructure challenges are very important that we continue to look at that impact the challenges faced for crime reduction strategies. The equipment that law enforcement has a impact on how they provide service to the community, from radios to vehicles. That weighs on how they do their job, and it's so important, especially nowadays with all these active shooters and terroristic threats, that Indian country is not exempt from that. And when you have infrastructure challenges, when the radio systems, for example, you can't communicate with your neighboring agencies. One, because of the jurisdictional challenges we talked about before. Two, it may be the funding that the tribal agency can't afford the radio system, because technology, as you know, costs money, and the price today, 2 years down the road, it's going to be, times 10. So, the infrastructure challenges are something we will always face, but we need to try and stay ahead of, because that does impact how crime reduction strategies are implemented within the tribal communities. Social and economic issues. We want to make sure that we recognize if there's a poverty issue, an unemployment issue, a substance abuse issue within the communities. That's important piece to where crime reduction strategies won't be successful if you don't understand the social and economic issues within every tribal community. These are things that, and it's not a one-stop shop where if you have poverty, it's going to be handled the same way as substance abuse. Each social and economic issue you have to look at as individually and try to address those through crime reduction strategies. Political dynamics, politics, that's out in the country, regardless of what government you work for, in the tribal government or outside government, and tribal politics are no different when it comes to having politics on the reservation. So the piece to that is we want to just recognize that when we do crime reduction strategies, we want to minimize any political issues, because really politics and law enforcement, they run parallel, but they shouldn't mix. Law enforcement has a job to do, and politics should do everything they can to support the law enforcement direction. And they only can do that when law enforcement understands what the expectations are of the community, and they understand what the problems are. I always look at law enforcement as it starts in the community, and in order for the law enforcement agency to be successful, you have to take care of the community. If the community sees that you're taking care of them and you're meeting their expectations, they're going to mention it to the political officials. The political officials would rather compliment you than chastise you or yell at you or hold you accountable to something that you're not doing in the community. So once the community brags about the service they're getting from law enforcement and public safety to the politicians, then hopefully the politicians recognize law enforcement and are able to provide feedback, and also recognize that through that service they're providing, sometimes they need to improve the infrastructure. Sometimes politics needs to support law enforcement when it comes to improving communications, issuing radio or buying radios and issuing body-worn cameras and putting cameras in cars. So it's important that politics play a role in reduction strategies. However, that role has to be started at the law enforcement base. Law enforcement has to understand what those expectations are in the community in order for them to do their job, and then allow the community to assist in driving the political dynamics to support law enforcement to make sure that there's a safe community within their jurisdiction. Challenges faced by tribal agencies, again, retention and recruitment is a problem. That's not only a problem within law enforcement, that's a problem around around the country. So it's not only a problem in Indian country, it's a problem in law enforcement around the country. And right now you have the robbing Peter to pay Paul when it comes to law enforcement agencies because of the carrot of benefits that are being waived to police officers that are out there. You have, for instance, the state of Florida put out a proposal around the country that they have. They'll help you move, and they'll give you a sign-on bonus. If you move to the state of Florida, they'll help you move wherever state you're at. And then when you get here and you get hired, you'll get a sign-on bonus. So they're putting the carrots out there. And so police officers are moving from state to state or agency to agency, depending on the salaries they're being paid, the benefits, the retirement that they have. So that's impacting how the crime reduction strategies are being implemented or even followed through in communities, because sometimes you don't have the amount of people to be effective when you do implement a crime reduction strategy. Training and expertise, this is a constant that law enforcement they have to continue to watch, they have to continue to build on. Training is so important. It's not just that you're trained once and then you let them go. You have to continually train them because if you don't use it, you lose it. So you want to make sure that the officers are trained on the basics, but also you want to ramp that up to make sure they're trained on the crime reduction strategies that are being implemented into the community. So they also can understand what their roles are to make sure they have the knowledge, skill, and ability to provide that high level of concierge service to your tribal community. To address these challenges, law enforcement agencies must target these areas. They must target the jurisdictional issue. They must target the adaptation of the cultural training and understanding to make sure crime reduction strategies are working, and more importantly, they're being implemented with the collaboration of tribal leadership, the tribal community, and any external agency that supplies support to the reservation. So crime reduction strategies do not work if you only have one piece of the pie or a quarter piece of the pie. It has to be everybody. Everybody has to have both feet in and be committed to ensure that these challenges are addressed. Tailoring strategies to tribal agencies and tribal communities. It's so important to incorporate cultural elements into the strategies to ensure acceptance and effectiveness. Community engagement is so important. Law enforcement has to put the guard down at times and allow the community to come in through the doors in meetings and just have open discussions. So the community, one, understands the law enforcement side, but more importantly, law enforcement understands the community sides. So that engagement has to be ongoing, and it cannot just be a one-time thing, and it has to be relevant. It just can't be a smoke and mirrors or just check the box type engagement. It has to be an involvement that is mutual and also understanding and have that respect and trust to make sure that law enforcement is hitting all those cultural relevant topics so they understand how to provide and how to move forward and provide that service to the community. Collaboration and partnership, it's so important that law enforcement has those partnerships across not only the tribal programs and the community, but outside the jurisdiction. One of the things that I would add to that is that tribal law enforcement, if they can find those solutions to bring those other outside agencies into the tribal arena and get them to understand, sometimes they need to see it in action instead of hearing about it. And so if you can bring those outside agencies to collaborate with, even have them ride along with you as a tribal police department, have that outside agency ride along with you for an hour or 2 or 3 and have them join you when you do community events, and let them see that you as a community really want to collaborate, but you're also open to having them around, but you want to make sure that they respect your sovereignty and they respect your culture. And in order for that to happen, you're giving them the opportunity to understand your community. And then they don't have an excuse because you're opening the door for them to try to understand it and try to assist your organization to be safer. You want to make sure that you build capacity when it comes to training. There's nothing wrong with inviting community members into your police training. There's certain things you're not going to invite them into, but the majority of police training, you can involve the community to let them see how you do things in law enforcement. It's so important that the community understands the law enforcement community. When you look at law enforcement, it's a community in itself, and then you look at the tribal community, and that's a community in itself. So the goal is to take those two communities and mesh them together so they can coexist with respecting each other's world, and more importantly, respecting each other's world, but more importantly, having law enforcement understand that when it's meshed, that's the opportunity to provide that higher level of service, because you'll understand that community you're serving. So it's a give and take, but law enforcement has a little bit more responsibility and an expectation to make sure that they meet those requirements to provide that level of service to the community. So one way that you can do that is tailor your strategies to allow the community to come in and watch the training that you do, even participate at times. There's a Milo machine that you can get through grant funding, which is a system that has over 400 scenarios, and it's used across the country. And you can purchase one through the grant funding that you can bring the community in, and you can put them in a situation that law enforcement officers go in. And it's one thing like anything else, you watch it on TV or you hear the story and we get an opinion about it. But when you really live the circumstance and you live the situation, it's a little different. And so this Milo machine is just one example that you can put the tribal member in the circumstance where sometimes the police officers are in, and there's a training where every officer knows and is trained that if a subject has a knife and they're within a 21-foot circumference of you as the police officer, there's an opportunity it can kill you, and they're going to kill you possibly before you get your gun out of your holster. And I only say that because, and use that scenario, because this Milo machine kind of puts you in that adverse situation where you have weapons that are linked to this Milo machine. They're not real guns because they're connected to the machine, but you have to use your tools, the tools on your belt. That's your tool belt, your pepper spray, your firearm, your ASP. Those are those things that if the community sees how you're trained and they understand what you go through as a police officer, sometimes they recognize that the solution to something's not that easy. But you as a police officer, you have to give them that opportunity so they can try to understand what you're going through. Data collection and evaluation, it's so important that you collect the crime data, and not just collect it, but you review it, analyze it, and understand it so you can develop different strategies to be implemented. So it's very important that you take that challenge on to improve your data collection. And then when you analyze it, you have to make sure you're analyzing it correctly, because if you analyze it wrong and you create some strategies, those strategies may not work. And there's no such thing as perfection, but sometimes you only get one bite at the apple. So you want to make sure that when you analyze that data, when it comes to crime stats, and you can look at those reports to understand where you may have a crime problem, you may have a drug problem, you may have a homeless problem, or just an area that needs to be addressed. But you wouldn't know that unless you took all that data and you sat down, you mapped it out, and that's an important piece. And I've seen Indian country law enforcement agencies develop through some of these crime data softwares, but they're expensive, and that's where the grant funding and the resource allocation comes in. Sometimes you can write a grant, you can hire somebody to write a grant, and you can pay that person you hire and build that the cost of that individual you hire for grants, you can build that into the grant itself. So basically you're not having to break the bank when it comes to hiring somebody. You hire them on the front end, and then when you build out the grant, you can build out the cost of the individual and the services that go along with that. So there's different ways that I've seen across Indian country where are very strategic, where tribes have used the grant process and have built in the cost of the writing of the grant and all the management of the grants, and they've obtained the funds to where they've gotten body cameras for police officers, and along with body cameras, they have holsters and that are attached to the body camera. So when you have the holster attached to the body camera, when you pull the weapon, the camera automatically turns on no matter what. There's trainings that come with the body cameras, and Axon is really the driving force right now that's leading the edge of the body cameras. But they're so important to have, because that's another piece of data collection that you can see when it comes to crime strategies in the community. Because as a leader in law enforcement, you can't be everywhere every time. And so those cameras come in handy, and you're able to replay those cameras when the officers are out there to see what the officers do, see what they're evaluating, and you can use them as training. So if you can obtain some of those grant funds to escalate the support you have to address some of these strategies, it's very important. All right, so let's go over some examples of theories on how evidence-based crime reduction strategies are implemented and can be applied to your tribal communities. So we're going to go over the rational choice theory. This theory is basically outlines that individuals make rational decisions based on potential rewards and their risks. So somebody evaluates the risk versus rewards, and then they decide if they're going to commit the crime or not. So we're going to go over these each individually. This is just an overview. The next one is the routine activity theory. This is when a crime occurs, 3 elements must be present. A motivated offender you must have, suitable targets, and the absence of capable guardians, which would be the police. So for example, a motivated offender during this time would be the holiday season, and somebody's at the mall, and you have somebody there who wants to victimize somebody. The suitable target would be the say a lady that's walking into the parking lot. She's all by herself. It may be dark, or she's not paying attention. She's watching her phone, and the bad guy looks around, doesn't see anybody that's a threat to him, and then he goes ahead and commits the crime. Broken windows theory. This is an important one that we'll go over in a little bit. It's important on how it's implemented. And this basically says that when somebody sees that a community does not take care of itself and there's neglect and disorder, that means nobody cares. And since nobody cares, then the opportunity to continue the destruction continues. And that's through human behavior. So if you're walking down a street, and you may have heard the theory of a broken window, somebody sees a broken window in a building, and they walk by 5 days later and the window's still broke, and they go by the next day and another glass is broke. Nobody's fixing those windows, and then all of a sudden they pick up a rock and they start breaking windows because they see that nobody else is fixing it, and it's just fun to throw a rock through a window. And so this theory is important. It was implemented. It's really a prime theory that law enforcement uses, but the caveat to this is that it's not a paint everything with the same brush. It's a opportunity to use this theory to make it work for your community itself. Crime prevention through environmental design. This is really focused on how your building is or your structures are designed, and the makeup of the building as far as the environment around it. Or there's a bunch of trees blocking the windows. Is there enough lightage on the outside of the house? These theories are important because sometimes architects build things and they don't take in necessarily crime prevention measures. And so it's important for law enforcement to be on the front end when you're building structures in your community, because then having a seat at the table, you can give them advice. You can give them some strategies, the way they are going to put the plants and the trees and the lighting. And if it's a neighborhood, is there enough street lights in the neighborhood? You can talk about fire hydrants. You can make sure that everything is in place when it comes to fire codes. So it's important through crime prevention, through environmental design, that these strategies are used in your community to allow law enforcement to look at things on the front end instead of being reactive. We're going to look at the social disorganization theory. This suggests that crime and disorder are a result of weakened social ties. Again, this goes back to the community. If there's a community that has disorganization when it comes to maybe a lot of disruption, or they don't have a lot of support at home or in schools, and the community is in kind of disarray. The residents aren't as strong as they should be, and individuals see this, criminals see it, and that's when they take advantage of it. General deterrence theory. This theory proposes the fear of punishment can prevent individuals from engaging in criminal behavior. If that accountability piece is not there, then criminals tend to get the feeling that they're not going to be held accountable and there's going to be no punishment. So you want to make sure that through this theory that there's punishment, and individuals know that if you cross that line, you're going to be held accountable to make sure that your tribal community stays safe. Situational crime prevention. This suggests crimes can be prevented by manipulating the immediate environment to make it less attractive and more difficult for offenders to commit crimes. You can apply this by using crime prevention by environmental design, but more importantly, this goes hand in hand with that, but more importantly, this gives you an opportunity to put up cameras, to use trailers that have the cameras on it, to use devices that law enforcement has that you can show the presence of the community. You can show the presence to the community that law enforcement is in the area and they're taking it serious. For instance, in housing, sometimes if you have an apartment that is vacant, make that a substation. You know, if you're having an area in a problem in the area, in a housing area, give law enforcement an office as a substation, you know, and let them work out of that office and be part of that community. And sometimes by creating that environment and using it as situational crime prevention tactics, you can do community events where you have a barbecue, like a street block party, you know, which highlight the community to make sure that you're not going to tolerate some of the bad behavior that's around. So situational crime prevention is important and can be used in many different facets, but it's got to fit the community. There's not one square peg or a square hole. You have to look at what your needs are and your expectations in the community, and then you take it and make situational crime prevention work for you. Problem-oriented policing, you know, that's looking at the problem and then bringing the stakeholders together. For instance, if you have a substance abuse problem in the community, it's so important for law enforcement to work with your social services programs or family services program, whatever the title you use for social services. Those programs should be joined at the hip. And the reason for that is because law enforcement's at the front line. They're going to come in contact with these individuals who may need support. They may not be criminals. They may just have a bad substance abuse problems and they're making bad decisions in their life. And sometimes those bad decisions lead into committing crimes. Well, if law enforcement comes across these individuals, the key would be is to be joined at the hip with social services instead of bringing them to jail and keeping them on the street. Try and find all those avenues to get them the help that they need. So problem-oriented policing is basically that. Collaborating with other programs, other entities, such as the health department, social services. Sometimes it's a traffic problem. You want to partner with the transportation folks of your tribe and put up a traffic light or a stop sign or, you know, rumble strips, speed bumps. You know, so law enforcement needs to look at these problem-oriented policing problems and use them to reduce the crime or reduce those opportunities for crimes to take place. Again, we just want to go over the rational choice theory. Theoretically, framework can provide tribal law enforcement with a foundation for developing strategies to deter criminal behavior and increase the perceived risk and decrease the perceived benefits of committing crimes within tribal communities. Got a short video here for you, just kind of illustrate what the theory is about. All right, so just go over some of the applications of this theory. Target hardening, increase the difficulty of the criminals to commit crimes. You want to look through security systems, crime watch programs, neighborhood watch programs, um, and sometimes you want to approach the criminals themselves or the people that are committing these crimes, and sometimes they just need that support. They need that individual to come up to them and show them the way, because sometimes they may not know the way. So you want to target harden the environment, and sometimes that's through better locks on your doors, better lighting, and engaging the community to help you with that. You don't want to do that alone. Again, it's got to be a team effort, and law enforcement won't be successful unless you bring the community with you. Focus deterrence, identify individuals or groups that are high risk. Again, you want to work with your other programs, identify these individuals, and try to deter their criminal behavior. Sometimes if they know that you're watching, they're not going to do it. And sometimes when they know you're watching, that gives you that opportunity to approach them and focus really on what their needs are. Again, the result you want to accomplish is not jail. You want to get them back to where they're on stable ground and be a good steward of your community. Increase visible policing. That's so important, that law enforcement continues to be visible in the community, and not only through patrolling in a car, but on a foot, on bikes, on ATVs, on horses. You know, park, walk, and talk is another avenue that you could go out there to help minimize under this theory. You want to make sure that you create an illusion that you're always around, right? Because then they don't know when you're coming around. So if you have that illusion you're always around on law enforcement, people will recognize and not so much commit crime in that area. Again, you want to promote community involvement. It's so important to have that community be your eyes and ears out there, because in law enforcement, you can't do it yourself. Problem-solving courts, law enforcement engaging in drug courts, engaging in the treatment facilities and the rehabilitation facilities, which is not necessarily traditional for law enforcement. So sometimes partnering with these facilities and having an understanding of what can be offered as a police officer in the community, you have that opportunity as another tool in your toolbox if you understand how treatment and rehabilitation works, along with the court system, because you could defer a case when it goes to court, and you can have that case deferred to where somebody goes to treatment instead of going to prison. Informing potential offenders through community meetings, social media, and other forms of communication. You can inform the community of the crime risks that are out there. It's so important to have those measures in place to let the community know what's going on. You know, everybody's on social media these days. They're going to social media more than television and the news. So it's so important to inform the community. And when you're informing the community, the offenders are out there on social media as well. So they're going to see that information you're putting out. They're going to see that you're reaching out to the community, and they're going to be a little bit reserved to commit any crimes that are out there. But the other thing that may do, it may give them an opportunity to come forward to get the help that they need. So it's very important that law enforcement keeps an open mind and a handout to make sure that the community or the individuals that are committing these crimes have the ability to communicate with you and help them come to you to problem solve. You want to make sure whatever criminal behavior happens, that the punishment is swift and it can be reinforced to ensure that crimes aren't taking place again. If an individual is told, if you tell your child to go clean their room, and they don't clean their room, and their brother sees that they're not getting in trouble for cleaning the room, then they're potentially the behavior that you're teaching, it's okay to have a dirty room. So the brother's going to have his room dirty. Well, there's no difference when it comes to criminals. If they see that people are committing crimes and they're not getting in trouble for it, then there's other criminals that are going to commit those same crimes. So you want to make sure that accountability is swift, It's severe, not in a manner where you're hurting somebody, but severe where they understand that they don't want that punishment because it's not something they can afford, where if their rights are taken away or if they're going to be put in jail for a little while. So you want to make sure that the sanctions are in place for accountability. Sometimes it's important to reach out to individuals who have been through the system that can teach other individuals. And I'll use the analogy of when you have multiple children and you're a parent and you tell one child and you're trying to get a message to one of your children and they're just not listening to you. And then a friend of yours is over for dinner or you're out to dinner and that friend is talking to your child and says the same thing that you've been saying to your child, but says it in a different manner. And then all of a sudden the light bulb goes off in your child's head and they get it. And they get how they're supposed to act or what they're supposed to do. Sometimes that behavior or that path is the solution when dealing with criminals. So sometimes you want to reach out to somebody who's been through the system, who may have made bad choices in the past, but has gotten their life in order, and bring them as a partner with you, and bring them to the individuals that are at risk, and utilize them to help bridge the gap and help this person get the help that they need so it doesn't go down the criminal path. So that's not necessarily taught over the years in law enforcement, but it's moving that way. Law enforcement is recognizing that we sometimes need to use individuals who made bad choices in the past who are now on the straight and narrow and they're doing really well in the community. They can be a great advocate for us. So in this theory, in the application of this theory, it's important to reach out to individuals who may have been in the system in the past and see if they can make an impact. And most of the time, what you'll find is individuals who've been through the system and have learned and recognized that their behavior in the past was wrong. They've learned from it. They've come through it, and they want to give back to the community. So law enforcement needs to recognize that those individuals out there can be a great advocate to keep a community safe. Again, economic and social incentives. You want to provide job opportunities for education, or community programs. That's so important for tribal law enforcement to create an environment where the perceived risk of committing a crime are enhanced while the potential rewards are diminished. You want to make sure that you are impacting people's decision making to ensure that you're reducing crime throughout your tribal communities. All right, so then we'll go over the broken windows theory. Again, this is a theory that suggests visible signs of disorder such as broken windows, graffiti, general disrepair can lead to more serious crime by signaling that an area is unattended or not cared for. Applying this theory in tribal law enforcement and community involves proactive strategies to maintain and enhance physical environment to prevent crime.
One of my favorite sociology theories is called broken windows theory. It was originally coined in 1982 by James Wilson and George Kelling, and then became a popular theory, particularly in the 1990s. However, the theory most likely originates in some studies done in the 1960s by Stanford psychologist Philip Zimbardo. I enjoy this theory because of its unique perspective on crime, particularly property crime, and that it helps explain my own deviance as a youth. The idea of this theory is that when we see things that are broken down, we feel like no one cares about them, and thus we can further violate them without repercussion because, obviously, nobody is looking after it. Therefore, no one is going to care if we break it further. For example, if we came across a building or a car with broken windows, if we were interested in breaking windows, this could be a great opportunity because someone else has already started the process and nobody has taken care to clean it up. So we could do it as well without getting into trouble. Applying this to crime in general then, crime is more likely in areas where there is less care, cleanliness, and orderliness. Crime then occurs more in neighborhoods or locations that are run down or uncared for, where the community cares less about its image. Hence, no need to keep up the good image. The damage is already done, right? The theory can also be applied to people. When someone is seen to be broken down, when it seems like nobody cares about them, they can be violated without trouble as well. In the 1990s, this theory was often applied to crime reduction and often reported with positive results. Okay, if this is the perspective on crime, then what policies do you think they, or would you, put in place to reduce crime in neighborhoods and communities?
All right, so when we look at some of the policies or practices that we can implement with this application, is we want to look at the environmental maintenance. Law enforcement can take a role to work with your buildings and grounds. They can work with your housing department or your tribal community development departments, public works, and create a referral system internally in the tribe that when law enforcement sees something awry in the environment when it comes to maintenance, that they can refer that to the program within a 24-hour period, and then have a system set up that is sorry about that, my mic unplugged. They can have a system set up that is in place to where those programs can go out and take the graffiti off the walls within 24 hours. They can fix a broken window. They can fix a broken door. They can remove an abandoned car if it's on private property. So it's got to be responsive from the programs that you're working with. But it all starts with law enforcement flipping the switch when it comes to identifying those things in the community that create that uneasiness or uneasy look. You want to look at having cleanup days in your community. I've heard tribes across the country do different cleanup days in their waterways, on the sides of the roads. Make it a fun environment for the community, and it also creates that opportunity to build relationships between the public safety people and your community. So those are opportunities you want to look at. Graffiti is so important. Sometimes you want to put in ordinances that when somebody gets caught putting graffiti on a wall, that they're the ones that clean it. And that's part of your tribal law that you can enact to where somebody who does a graffiti and is caught, they'll be the ones that clean it. So there's nothing like the person out cleaning the graffiti that they put on the walls and everybody seeing them out there with a paintbrush rolling the paint along the wall. So you can put graffiti abatement out there. Again, natural and landscape surveillance, that's important to where you want to make sure that your environment is not a hiding place for criminals to hide. Lighting is very important when it comes to street lighting or even property lighting. So you want to make sure that that's evaluated, and you can have the law enforcement officers come out and do a threat assessment or a risk assessment on your buildings to take a look at that. Outreach and education, you want to continue to have community meetings. You want to spread the word to the community in regards to issues that are in the environment that the community can help. If they see something, if they see a broken down car, or they see something that is broken, such as the window on a building, that they make that phone call. So again, this is a team effort, but law enforcement being out there 24 hours a day, and your responsibility to take care of that community or make sure it's safe, you could flip the switch very easy if you have that relationship with the community. Local businesses, again, the partnership with them. Crime Watch is an important piece because it gives ownership to the community, because the Crime Watch is made up of people who live in that community. And one of the things that will always be true where law enforcement sometimes misses is that the law enforcement officer may not live in that community, so they go home after 8 or 12 or 10 hours. But the people that live there are there 24 hours a day, so they're going to see a lot more than that police officer who's there for 12, 8 hours hours a day. So the police need to recognize that you know, the success in this here really relies in that partnership with the community. Zero tolerance policing, you know, there's a balance to this when it comes to zero tolerance policing, because you don't want this to go awry. This theory has an opportunity to go off the tracks if it's not implemented right. And as I indicated earlier, each theory has to be molded to work for your community. This theory, they implemented it in New York, and they did a phenomenal job in the subway system with graffiti and the homeless in New York back in the 90s. And then it escalated into other allegations where the officers were being accused of being abusive, and it turned into some racial wars and racial allegations. So this theory, although it's sound, if you're going to use it, you want to make sure that it's implemented right, and the law enforcement leadership needs to make sure that when it's implemented, that it stays on task and it's for the good of the community, and it doesn't go off the tracks. Because like anything else, if you don't have leadership, sometimes things go awry. So it's important that leadership is a part of this theory, because there are some circumstances in the past when it was implemented in communities and it didn't turn out the way it should turn out. So this is one of those theories that I support, but I also recognize that if it's not done the right way, it could lead to other problems within your community. And as law enforcement, you don't want to create problems for a community. Your job is to engage the community to make it better and make it safe. All right, we'll go on to the next theory. Is they call it CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. Again, this is an opportunity to reduce crime by enhancing the quality of life in your tribal community, and implementing these principles in your tribal community and through law enforcement. You know, this is a multifaceted approach that involves everybody, but law enforcement being at the front end of it has the opportunity to provide you or your stakeholders with recommendations that will prevent the environment from being victimized by criminals.
What is crime prevention through environmental design? Crime prevention through environmental design is a multidisciplinary approach to deterring criminal behavior by manipulating the built environment. It emphasizes the relationship between an area's physical characteristics and the likelihood of crime. The principles of crime prevention through environmental design include natural surveillance, natural access control, territorial reinforcement, and maintenance. Natural surveillance promotes visibility and sightlines, allowing people to easily observe their surroundings. Natural access control uses elements like doors, fences, and landscaping to guide people and restrict unauthorized access. Territorial reinforcement fosters a sense of ownership and responsibility, making it clear where public spaces end and private spaces begin. Maintenance ensures that spaces are well kept, sending a message that they are cared for and monitored. By implementing these principles, crime prevention through environmental design aims to reduce opportunities for crime, increase the perception of safety, and improve the overall quality of life in communities.
Hey, Will, are you there? We're not hearing any sound coming out.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, there you are. Thanks so much.
No, I apologize. My system may not be working here. Okay, you can hear me now, though, right?
Yeah, I can hear you now. It cut out for about a minute there, but you're coming through loud and clear again.
Okay. So when we look at natural surveillance, we want to make sure that law enforcement is in the front of anything that you build. And it's unique because usually you don't have police officers sitting at the table when you're sitting around your architect and you're planning. And the reason why you want to do that is in the front end, they can give you recommendations that will allow when you're building out your structure. Again, it's recommendations for you, but it's a different view when it comes to what they look for criminal behavior, what that element looks for that criminals look at to victimize areas. So you want to try and put them at the front end of this so they can pick out and give you recommendations for that natural light, that natural visibility to where the community is going to be on the safer side. So they'll tell you where they think the cameras should be, where the lighting should be, and then use that to build out whatever structure or street that you're building out. That goes along the lines with the landscaping and
Will, your voice was cut out again. Will, are you still there? All our attendees, thanks so much for your patience. Sit tight. We know Will's been having some technical difficulties, so I think we're in the middle of another one of those right now. Let's just sit tight and give him a second. I'm sure he'll get his mic working again in just a moment. Hey, Will, we still can't hear you, just so you know. All right, guys, if you saw in the chat, Will is actively trying to fix his microphone issue. So please bear with us while we deal with the technical difficulties. We so appreciate your patience.
Brooke,
Will, is it working now? Oh, perfect. There you are. Hallelujah. All right. We're back, folks.
I apologize. I know enough about technology to be dangerous, so I don't even know what the issue was.
No worries. We're glad you're back on. I'm gonna mute and let you take it away.
All right. So when we look at this SEPTAD, we want to make sure that police officers are at the front of whatever you're building out and give them an opportunity to provide their professional expertise to provide you recommendations. Again, they're recommendations for you just to be able to help you design whatever structure or roadway that you're building. So that's basically the crime prevention through environmental design theory, is basically allowing law enforcement to use their technical expertise to assist in how the community is made up. And that's unique because law enforcement's never really been in the front of build outs, but it's important now because of history and what we've learned about criminals and how structures are built in the community and what criminals use to pick their targets. So this is an important one. Around the country, you need a certification to be a crime prevention practitioner, and it's something that you can use in your community. So if you don't have one, I highly recommend sending somebody to crime prevention through environmental design course and get them certified in that. All right, we're going to go over the social disorganization theory.
A macro perspective helps provide a better understanding of human behavior in a social environment. It examines the impact organizations, institutions, and communities have on individuals and families. A theory that helps us better understand the macro perspective is social disorganization theory. Social disorganization theory was founded by Shaw and McKay in 1942. After World War II, when our country was experiencing multiple social problems, such as alcoholism, mental health disorders, and crime due to migration. Scientists have many different ideas of what social disorganization theory is, but they all share the general consensus that social problems occur because of social disorganization. The concept of social organizational theory sees society as a collection of social systems that work together in unison. This means that when something impacts one part of the system, all parts need to adjust to sustain and maintain harmony. When adjustment is failed to be made, social disorganization occurs. Examples of social disorganization are cultural conflict, crime, increased mental illness, and eventually the breakdown of the system. We can apply the social disorganization theory when examining adolescent crime rates in our society. By using the social systematic model, according to research by Sampson and Grove in 1989, the systematic model examines three variants of behavior control: personal, parochial, and public. Put in simpler terms, your family, your neighborhood, your economic status, and the policies that affect you. When a family has little structure and stability, the probability of their children committing crime increases substantially. Researchers have found direct correlation between family economic status, well-being, and the amount of crime committed during adolescence. Neighborhoods and small social networks provide an informal control system of behavior. When a neighborhood consists of low-income families, residential mobility, racial heterogeneity, and disrupted families, the adolescent groups are more likely to participate in unsupervised gatherings. This in turn leading to the increased likelihood of crime. In regards to economic status and policies affecting these crime rates, Shaw and McKay found that socioeconomic status in a neighborhood frequently holds a strong correlation to crime. Thus, on a macro.
All right, so when we look at the social disorganization theory, we want to look at several things. So we want to make sure that the community is in harmony together. It's important that the community works together and is aligned with each other. And one way to do this is to focus on your elders in your community and bring those two groups together. Because when you bring the elders together and the communities together, the elders and the youth together, the generation in the middle brings everybody together. So by targeting your elders and your youth to be informal leaders in your community to create that the cohesiveness is very important. Youth programs are so important to keep them busy. If the youth have idle time, they have an opportunity to get involved in mischief. So you want to make sure that your law enforcement component is engaged with the youth. Economic development, support tribal economic initiatives, try to alleviate poverty and unemployment. I know that's easier said than done, but law enforcement should be at the table to help when you're looking at solutions, because on the front line, if law enforcement understands the programs that are out there that can assist the homeless or the challenged individuals in the community, it provides them an opportunity to get them help. And again, in lieu of arrest, the last thing you want to do is take somebody to jail. Family support is so important. You want to make sure that the family unit is there, parenting classes and child care assistance to make sure that family structure is in line. And that's when DCF, or Department of Children and Family Services, gets in. When they get involved, that's what they're focused on. They're focused on that family structure unit to make sure that there's enough support there for the family. And as we all know, when we have children, there's no book that tells you exactly how to be a parent. And so we all put our best foot forward and on behalf of the children. And sometimes that ends up going off the tracks, and it teaches kids to make decisions that traditionally they wouldn't have made if they had that family structure and support and they were on track. So we want to focus on family support, and that's important when police officers are out there, when they see those issues, that they communicate with your family services department to make sure that those families have support. Education and training opportunities, we went over that with several other theories. Community policing is so important with this theory because the community is where the officers are in the front line, and the officers are out there seeing these issues. And if they don't understand what the issues are, they're not going to be able to provide solutions. So it's important that the police establish that community partnership and they empower the community to take part in law enforcement crime prevention efforts. Again, it's a team effort. the one thing that I can't stress enough is the law enforcement officers understanding the cultural heritage of the communities they're serving in those traditional ways, and try to find those opportunities where you can take law enforcement practice and principles and mesh them together with tribal cultural identities or traditions. And that's the piece that is missing, I think, in tribal law enforcement is taking those two worlds and bringing them together. And this theory is so important, and it collaborates with this theory is taking that challenge of law enforcement and how do you mesh that together with tribal culture and tribal tradition to make a community safe. And again, conflict resolution and mediation, it's so important that police officers understand what conflict resolution and mediation services are out there. And sometimes right on the scene, they're taught to be conflict resoluters, but sometimes they fail to recognize that. So if they understand what services are out there, then it's at the forefront for them to contribute to making your community safer. The general deterrence theory suggests that individuals are deterred from engaging in criminal behavior when they believe that the probability of being caught and punished is high and the punishment is severe and certain. So this is where the criminal will be in fear because they see or they understand that if they are caught after they commit the crime, that they're going to be in trouble, they're going to be punished, and that's where they're evaluating the risk versus reward.
It's usually wrong to harm people, but punishment is an exception. Punishment involves harming someone. For example, if we send someone to prison, we're harming them by taking away their freedom. If we give someone a fine, we're harming them by taking away their money. But assuming that these people are actually guilty, this harm that we're causing seems morally okay. Our harming them seems justified. But what justifies punishment? If someone does something wrong, why is it okay to punish them? There are three main ways this question has been answered. According to retribution theories, punishment is justified simply as a matter of giving the wrongdoer what they deserve. This kind of justification is often referred to by its Latin name, lex talionis, and it's illustrated by the ancient principle, an eye for an eye. But whatever we call it, the idea behind it is simple. If you harm someone, you deserve to be harmed back. So that's one way punishment might be justified. But beyond retribution, there are also deterrence theories. These theories say that punishment is justified because it prevents people from doing bad things in the future. According to deterrence theories, the reason we can rightfully punish wrongdoers is because doing so protects society. It serves as a warning to both the wrongdoer and to anyone else who might be thinking about doing the same kind of thing. It signals that we as a society will not tolerate that kind of behavior. So according to deterrence theories, punishment is justified because it has good consequences. It deters crime and it results in a safer environment for everyone. Finally, there are rehabilitation theories of punishment. According to these theories, punishment is justified because it provides an opportunity to reform the wrongdoer. When someone commits a crime, not only have they done something wrong, but there also seems to be something wrong with them. They're the sort of person who willingly commits crimes. So according to rehabilitation theories, punishment is simply a way to reform the perpetrator, to transform them into a more productive member of society. If punishing them can bring about this change, then it's justified. Now, there are arguments for and against each one of these theories. And there are other nuanced theories that don't fit neatly into any of these categories. Furthermore, it's possible that the correct theory is actually some combination of the three. However, the next time you think that someone should be punished, ask yourself, should they be punished because they deserve to suffer? If so, that's retribution. Should they be punished because it will help prevent future wrongdoing? If so, that's deterrence. Or should they be punished because it will help transform them into a better person? If so, that's rehabilitation.
All right, so when we look at the general deterrence theory, several areas we're going to look at when we look at the application of it. We want to make sure that we have an enhanced presence in the community. So law enforcement needs to make sure that they're focused on the visibility, and they need to evaluate that through their stats. When they analyze stats, they can look at the crime area and see where areas that are higher in crime than others. Now, the one thing that I would also add to that is they can't forget the area that doesn't have crime, because crime moves around. There's no jurisdiction boundaries for criminals. So you want to make sure that if you do focus on an area that is high in crime, you want to make sure that you don't forget about the other areas. Swift and certain justice. Again, you want to make sure that the punishment is there and it's proportionate and consistent with the accountability process that you have in your community. Community education and awareness. Law enforcement should continue to hold workshops and seminars. Again, it's important to bring the community to you, and you can hold community forums once a month, community action forums where at Seminole we would have a monthly meeting where community action tribal members would come in, and basically we would, not just law enforcement, we'd bring all the programs in, and we'd go for about an hour and a half, and just go for an hour and a half, and it wouldn't be a yelling or griping session. It would be a discussion to problem solve, and allow the community to have a voice, and then allow the programs to present what can be done and what challenges they're faced, and try to come up with a solution together. So community education and awareness is important. The collaboration with community leaders, you have informal leaders, and then you have your political leaders. You want to use both those arenas to build a strong stance against crime and create a culture of accountability. So it's important that the informal leaders step up, and it's important that your political leaders step up to send the message out that crime is not going to be tolerated, and that law enforcement is supported to discourage any criminal behavior in your communities. Again, social services is so important when it comes to the social issues and the economic issues that are out in your community. You want to make sure that law enforcement is joined at the hip with them, not to be a tattletale or to be against the community, but supportive law enforcement. If they understand what social services programs are out there for people, then they can guide people in that direction instead of individuals going down the path of committing crimes. You want to, again, have partnerships, not just with the community. You want to look at outside law enforcement organizations or emergency management, fire rescue organizations, or other jurisdictions that have different programs that could help your community. Sometimes it's worth, making that decision, and not having that fear of change. Sometimes we bend to our fear, where it's human nature, where we don't want to change, and sometimes we need to change for the betterment of the community. So if law enforcement sees something that can benefit the community to make it safer, I encourage that law enforcement change and look at bringing other avenues in to help, because it's not about one person or one entity, it's about the community as a whole. Technology and surveillance. This, again, if you have the funding or the grant funding you can find, it's so important to have technology and surveillance out there. Work in the direction of having a fusion center, putting cameras up. License plate readers are a great deterrent, to where you have them around your community or your high traffic areas. You can put license plate readers there, where you'll know who's coming in and going out. And if a crime happens, then you have evidence that you can go to watch. So you already have a built-in suspect list when you have those cameras or those license plate readers. Again, during this theory, you want to make sure that you're cultural sensitive. You respect that the traditions of the community, and this is where, again, you want to mold law enforcement and the tribal traditions together and find out what works for the best of your community. A quick SWOT analysis and evidence-based crime reduction. You want to consider the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats that law enforcement can better understand. Some of the strengths of implementing evidence-based crime reduction practices under these theories is effectiveness, their efficiency, the accountability is there. Usually doesn't cost a lot of money, may cost some overtime for the staff, but if you're really looking at the community and you have the data, you should be able to do this with your current staff and then supplement it with minimal overtime. Again, and that collaboration of internal and external partners. Some of the weaknesses, you may have limited capabilities. You may lack the comprehensive evidence to be able to look at the data. You may have implementation challenges where you don't have the manpower, so that becomes a problem. Time and resources, your officers may be so busy doing something else that they're not able to put in the evidence-based crime reduction theories. Potential for unintended consequences or political or public perceptions. Sometimes things are driven through political or public perceptions that impact further the criminal element, and that adds to the criminal's liking. It's kind of the art of war theory where there's disruption, and when there's disruption, no one's paying attention, and that's what the criminals like, is when the political or public perception is going down this path, and everybody's focused on that instead of focused on the criminals. So we want to make sure that there's a balance when it comes to perception, and law enforcement can control some of that by being a good communicator to the community and being transparent. Opportunities you have situational tactics. You have the opportunity to really focus on hotspot policing, an opportunity also to work with the offenders that are committing the crimes, and also previous offenders that have gone on a straight and narrow, and they're going to help making the community better. Again, opportunities of technology, data analysis, the opportunity to partner with other people that you may not have partnered with before, and to provide training and education and allow the community to come in part of that training, and that helps build that relationship of trust and respect between the tribal community and your law enforcement. Because at the end of the day, there shouldn't be a line there. Law enforcement should be part of the community, and if they're not, then they should focus on that to make sure that through training and education they can bridge those gaps. Some of the threats, the lack of resources, the resistance to change. Again, human nature is we don't like to change, but the reality is we change every day in our behaviors. We just not necessarily have it impact us as much. So a threat would be resistance to change. Lack of knowledge and training. It's important that knowledge, skill, and ability is at the highest it can be for your law enforcement organization. Political and public pressure. That's a threat that can impact officers. If the officers are afraid to do their job because of the political or public pressure, then criminals like that opportunity, and the officers just don't do their job, or they're not around, they're not visible. So you want to make sure that in your community that the political and public pressure, that there's a balance, and that pressure should be minimized and focused to be minimized, and to support law enforcement and support the safety of the community. Organizational barriers, that's something that if law enforcement has organizational barriers internally, that could hamper the patrol techniques of the police officers, and data limitations, as we discussed earlier, as far as crime stats. Echoes of Shattered Glass, Enhancing Crime Patrol in Indian Country. Basically, this presentation, the information, although only 90 minutes, so it's a lot of information in a 90-minute span, it's a reduction strategy tailored to tribal agencies and tribal communities that can effectively address crime and improve public safety. By taking evidence-based strategies and your law enforcement leaders using these theories to better your community and using them to be molded in your community. Again, you just can't take them and say, okay, it's going to work. You have to take the principles of it, know what the expectations are, know the barriers that are in the community, know the strengths of the community, and allow them to mesh with the theory. So the challenges and the hurdles that a communities are facing can be dealt with. So we want to make sure that consider the unique needs, challenges, and strengths of the tribal community. These strategies can be cultural relevant, they can be community focused, and they can really be successful in reducing your crime rates. So I encourage law enforcement leadership to really try to pull yourself out of the crisis. I understand what the crisis of law enforcement brings. You do a phenomenal job out there, and when you're in the shoes of law enforcement, you deal with things in public that others don't necessarily understand, nor should they understand, because they're not in the profession. But sometimes in law enforcement, we have to take a step back and realize that evidence-based crime reduction theories do have a place in the success to keep the community safe. Moreover, in Indian country, we can use these theories to work for us in Indian country. We just have to make sure that we take these theories and blend them into the community that we serve, and make sure that the theory is tailored to that specific community. So it's important that the opportunity to use these evidence-based strategies is at the forefront of your work. So here is my contact information. I know I apologize for the hiccup with the audio. My contact number's there. I know this was a pretty detailed 90-minute structure. Feel free to call me or email me. You can call me directly. That's my direct line. If you have any questions, or if I can answer any questions or provide any feedback to you, you know, I'm always here to assist. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being on today, and I wish all of you nothing but success and happy holidays to everybody. And please stay safe in the communities wherever you're at.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Will, for that amazing presentation. As I close out the webinar, everybody, feel free to submit any other questions or comments that you might have for Will into the chat. He is still on the call. I have launched the feedback survey for everybody, but it's also linked here. We do ask that you please take a moment to complete the survey about today's webinar. It takes just a minute or two, and your feedback really helps us to do more of what's working and to improve upon what needs it. We invite you to be as candid as you want, because the survey is anonymous, just something to know. And we hope you can join us for our next webinar. This is actually going to be tomorrow. This is New Employee Onboarding Keys to Retention, Steps 1 for Tribal Housing. This is with Lisa I. Perez. As usual, our registration for webinars is free. And feel free to access this and any other recorded webinars online on our website, nativelearningcenter.com. We have a Cathedra Webinars tab featuring a recorded webinar section, and you can click on any one of the webinars that we've done for the past 2 years. So feel free to view those, share them with your friends and colleagues. And please also check out our upcoming events posted to our various social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And we even have a podcast titled Hope Athenga Native American Podcast, where we discuss more focused topics within tribal housing and self-determination. You can listen to that on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as viewing the video recordings with our guests on YouTube. All right, so once again, I want to thank all of our participants for joining us today. Thank you again, Will, for such an amazing presentation. We hope everybody has a fantastic rest of the day, and we hope to connect with you real soon. I'm going to go ahead and close it out.